Hello, welcome back to another live. If you're new here, my name is Laken and I go live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern to chat about all things goals. I update you on my current goals, both my reading goals and all my other goals. And then I jump into a topic of the week. This month we are on a theme all about routines. And then I open up the floor for questions. Any questions that you have submitted in the last week or any questions that you have for those of you who are able to join us live. But let's start with our first question that we always start with, which is celebrating some wins. So what is one small win that you have from the last week since we were together? If you are here live, please say hello in the chat. I feel like my coffee is like leaking everywhere. Say hello in the chat. Let us know what your win is in the chat. And if you are part of the replay fam, please say hello down in the comments and share your win down there. While I wait for those to pop up. Oh, that coffee is so good though. Okay. My win is I took some actual rest time this weekend. There was a moment this weekend where we didn't have any plans. The house was in decent shape. Were there things I could have done? Sure. I'm sure there were. But Lila went down for her nap and I said, I am just going to sit on the couch and watch TV and not try to also fold a load of laundry, not try to also do whatever it was. I'm just going to sit and I'm going to watch. And I did that and it felt so good. It'd been a really long time since I had just done that and not felt bad about it. Cause like when I watch TV later in the evening, I feel like I should go to bed. But at 3 p.m, I didn't feel that. So that was my win from this last week. Let me hop over to the comments. Got 2 strength workouts in, enjoying a chai latte. Yum. If you are new here, we used to also answer the question, what are you drinking? That's how I kicked off every one of these for years. We've been doing these for over 4 years, which is just mind-blowing to me. Took real time off to enjoy my cousin's visit from the UK. Didn't look at your work phone at all. That is amazing. I hope you're so proud of that. Hiked 2 mountains this weekend. Could be me. Love that. That's awesome. I love hearing about all your wins. I'm sure there are more flowing in, but let's go ahead and keep moving for the sake of time. Last week, I just talked and left very little time for questions. So let's move on to my book updates for the week. There really aren't any. I've made a little bit of progress on each of my books. I'm currently reading The Light We Carry, which is Michelle Obama's second book. I'm on the 3rd book of The Court of Thorns and Roses, and I'm reading The Gap in the Gain. And just a little bit of progress percentage-wise on each of them, but nothing drastic. Haven't finished anything. A couple more wins over here. Actually set some goals for August. So excited for you. I love that. Drinking water and on a 7-day streak with your AM and PM routines. I love that. I have a love-hate relationship with streaks because I feel like streaks can provide this momentum and this excitement, but at the same time, then if you break it, you automatically feel like you failed at everything, and that is not always the case. Got my August goal set and kept them short and small with a big. Wow. I tried to combine the words busy and August and said biggie. Busy August ahead. Did a quarterly refresh a month late, but it made the most sense for your summer. Then it wasn't late. Then that's what made sense. Your quarterly refresh was meant to be between July and August. I talked about this a lot in May, suggesting that some of you may want a refresh between May and June instead of waiting till June, July. And I think that's going to be the case for me next year as well. I'm trying to figure out how to potentially incorporate that into something, because I feel like if you're like me and you have a product, whether it's my goal planner or another goal planner, it is hard to encourage yourself to deviate from that. And so I'm still trying to figure that out. But there's no early or there is no late. It is whatever makes sense for you in terms of a refresh. All right. Let's jump into my monthly goal check-in. So here is a snapshot of my monthly goals that I literally took this morning. And now that I'm here, I can't even remember. No, I think the one-time steps, I had finished those first 2. I had already done that. Planning the birthday, I don't think I'd actually made any progress on it, but I have since last week's live. I hung out with my sister on Friday and we did some brainstorming for her birthday, but I am still open to any suggestions that y'all have for Lila's first birthday. And then I also talked last week about how I was changing it up from a list of like actual recipes to resources for recipes. And I got that list all situated. Weekly stuff has been going well. Most of the time I've got them all done at this point. On Wednesday, the only one that's been kind of eluding me is working on my albums. I am actually filming my goals video today, so I do need to figure out what I'm going to say about these things a little bit later today. I don't want to get too repetitive and tell you all these things today and then turn around and film it in a video that you'll have in a couple weeks. Daily stuff, same thing. It's been going pretty well. Nothing great, nothing terrible. You know, I'm not necessarily hitting something every day that I'm like, oh, that's great. In fact, spoiler alert, all 4 of these things got carried over to August because I'm like, none of them are good enough to not get carried over is kind of where we're at. So that is an update on my monthly goals. Speeding through things today. All right, one more reminder, question, request before we move into the topic, and that is my annual survey. So if you are on the internet, if you're watching this, you're on the internet. An annual survey is not a new phenomenon. That is something that a lot of content creators, business owners, whatever you want to call the people on the internet tend to do to get your feedback. And in the past, I have done this in January. I've been like, let's kick off the new year. Let me get your feedback. Not that that's not helpful, but the mentality that we're all in January is not necessarily when you need the most support. It's not necessarily when you need the most help with your goals. And January is just kind of overload on goals anyway. So when I also try to like throw in the annual survey, I feel like it gets very lost in the shuffle. And the mindsets that we all have in January is not the best for what I actually want to support you with, if that makes sense. So I decided this year we're going to do it in July. So it is 7 questions. Some of them are multiple choice. Like it hopefully does not take you that long to fill out, 5 minutes tops. I don't need paragraphs. 1 word, 1 bullet point is helpful. Any feedback that you provide is helpful. And I would love for you to share your thoughts. It is completely anonymous. So I have no idea what you're saying, who's what, why, where. What else? I think that's it. I would really appreciate it. The link is in the description box if you haven't done it yet. It's also gone out in an email. I also shared it on Instagram. So if you're one of those people that you're hearing about it again, thank you for being around and consuming my content. But if you are hearing about it for the first time, I would very much appreciate it. If you're watching the replay, the survey link will be live until Sunday night. And then starting on Monday, I'm going to start looking at the results to implement and make changes and have things that will help you. So, okay, let me check the comments quick before we move into the topic. Celebrated your 11-year-old. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Finished 7 days in June. Also reading, listening to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I loved that book. That was a fantastic book. So good. I also feel like I put in the same category as that book is the 7.5 Deaths of somebody. I can't remember the name. Anyway, I love that book too. I love the questions this year of the survey, especially what goal-related question would you ask if we sat down and had a latte? Yeah, I thought that would be fun. Like if we were on having actual lattes and not live on the internet, what question would you ask me? Especially one-on-one. Like if it's just you and me, what question would you ask? Yes, Evelyn Hardcastle. That's what it is. 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I love that book. Oh my gosh, Louise. Hello from 3 a.m. in Australia while I feed my new bub and get her back to sleep. Oh my God, that makes me so happy. Thanks for keeping me company. Oh my gosh, I am more than happy to be that company for you because what was company for me and those, I'm like tearing up just thinking about those days, was Harry Potter on audio. That was me in the middle of the night for however long. Okay, let's get into the topic for this week. Let me the comments making me tear up. Also, I got this new cup from TJ Maxx, Marshalls. I can never remember which one is which. They're like the same company, aren't they? I went for 2 specific things, both of which I got. I needed more hangers Great place to buy hangers. And I needed a cheese grater. Ours, I forgot, got like bent and destroyed in the move. And somehow I haven't needed it in the last almost year and a half. And there was a recipe I was working on. I was making zucchini pancakes actually, and I needed a grater and didn't have one. I pivoted and just like used a peeler to kind of grate it and kind of chopped it up. It was kind of, it was makeshift, but I needed one. Anyway, went to Marshall's TJ Maxx to get that and saw this for $5 and could not resist. I think a couple other things jumped into our cart as well, but oh well. All right. So this month is all about routines. If this is your first time joining us, week 1, we talked about routines and goals. What are routines? How do they relate to goals? How do they not relate to goals? All about routines and goals and how they work together. Last week, we talked about designing routines, creating your ideal routine based on you and your life and your goals. This week, we're going to talk about implementing them. You know what's coming. If you've watched any of my videos or been in any of my calls, anything, you know what's coming. You are not going to start your entire routine tomorrow and expect to stick with it. You're just not. That is not how routines work. That is one of the biggest learning things I have had to learn it the hard way, but I want to tell you again and again and again and again, because I don't want you to have to learn it the hard way. Like I don't, and you probably have woken up on January 1st and said, I'm going to start a new morning routine. And you mapped out the 10 steps of your morning routine. And then you did it January 1st, January 2nd, maybe even January 3rd. And that was it. And then you were done. I've been there. You've been there. That is not how implementing routines work. That's not what I'm going to tell you to do, because I know that it doesn't work. It hasn't worked for me. Probably hasn't worked for you. So my suggestion, based on my experience and helping others implement routines, is to pick one. Yep. One step. One small step. Ideally, this step is small and exciting. Something that you want to do. Now, I understand that not every routine has things that you want to do. I don't necessarily like the act of cleaning. I like to organize. I like to tidy. I don't really like to clean. So cleaning routine isn't necessarily going to excite me. But if you are struggling to pick a step that is exciting, go back to week 2. Go back to the why of your routine. Why is that routine important to you? What makes you excited about that? What would have the biggest impact on that? That is your most exciting step, even if you wouldn't be excited to do with it. So for example, when I started my morning routine, the first thing I started with was reading The Daily Stoic. It is a book. It is a daily read. And that is how I started my morning routine. Was I just read that. It was less than 5 minutes a day. It had a date at the top, which encouraged me to keep going. And that was the foundation of my morning routine. My evening routine, the foundation has kind of shifted actually over the years. Sometimes it has been like right now, it's actually closing the blinds because now we live on a front facing apartment. Well, in Chicago, it's both front and back facing because they don't chop them up like they do in New York City. I never had a front facing apartment. In New York, my apartments always faced the back of the building. And so I want to make sure I close my blinds at night. That is the catalyst to my evening routine. In the past, it's typically been feeding Charlie, has been my evening routine. Something small and something exciting. That is how you start with it. Now, if you are about to tell me, but Laken, I kind of have a routine, but I'm not so it's not brand new. Okay. If it's not brand new, you could try more than one. You could try. I'm here to tell you that typically what happens when you lump them together, your brain subconsciously also lumps them together. And then you just automatically think, I either do both or neither. And that is not how I want your routines to go. We're going to talk next week all about when life gets in the way and my thoughts on not having to do the whole routine to get the benefit of it. This week is just about implementing the routine. But it is much easier to follow through on that routine when life gets in the way and to have the mentality that each step stands on its own if you don't start them at the same time. Even routines you've had in the past. And if you watch my goals videos, I talked about this last year. So I had this great morning routine. I was pretty consistent with it. And then I had a baby and my morning routine was like gone. What even was morning? Who knew? Who knew what morning looked like? So I let that go. Q1 of this year, I was like, I'm getting back to it. I'm focusing on my morning routine. And I thought, well, I've done this before. So I'm going to start both steps in January and it's going to be fine. Some days it was fine. Some days I did them both and it was great. Some days I did neither and I probably wasn't going to do either anyway and it was fine. But there were definitely days where my brain said, well, I don't want to do that one. And so I'm just not going to do either. I'm just not going to do my whole morning routine, which was 2 steps at the time. That is not what I want for you. So I want you to start with one. If it is brand new, I would suggest you start with 1 step. Then you're going to do that until you've done it consistently. Now, we talked a little bit about consistency last week, and that consistency can mean a bunch of different things. And so I get this question a lot. Well, what does that mean? I want you to be more specific. When can I add on another step? How long should I do this 1 step before I add on another step? And I wish that there was a scientific way to measure this. The math brain in me, my math degree, wants to give you a scientific way, a number to say when you have done it 13 and a half times, then you can add on another step. But there's just not. And I want you to feel it. I want you to ask yourself, does this feel like it's a routine? Does this feel like something I am doing in my brain consistently? Consistency doesn't mean every day. You can still miss days and still feel like the answer to this is yes, I'm ready. A question that I also really want you to think about. Do you feel like even on hard days that you would do this step? Again, that doesn't mean you're not going to miss days because you're going to miss days. But even on a day where you're pretty tired, would you still do it or part of it? And if the answer is yes, then you can add on another step. It could be a week, 2 weeks. It could take you the whole month. It also really depends on the size of the step and what your life looks like, right? If we're talking about reading the Daily Stoic for 5 minutes or less, that may feel good to me after a week, but it's a small step. And I have a lot of flexibility in my morning, and because I don't have to be out the door at a certain time right now in this phase of life. So that a week might be enough for me to feel good about it. For you, who has to be out the door by a certain time, and you're picking a step that's going to take you 10 minutes, it might take you a whole month before it feels good and consistent and like you can add on. So there is no like scientific exact time that's like, okay, I'm ready to add step 2. But what I want you to remember, so you're going to layer on another one, right? That's the next step. That's how you implement it, one step at a time. But you can always go back and add on if you need to, or go back and change it if you need to. So let's say you start with the Daily Stoic and you're reading and you're doing that. And after 2 weeks, sorry, I just heard my tiny peanut cry. I don't know if you can hear that through the computer, if you can hear her in the background. After 2 weeks, you're like, okay, this feels pretty good. I'm going to add on journaling after that. So you read your Daily Stoic in the morning, and then after that, you journal for 5 minutes. And you do that for a couple days. And then the next day, you're running a little bit late. And so you're like, well, I'm just not going to do either of them. And then the same thing happens the next day and the next day. And now you're not doing either of them. That is not failure. That is life. It happens to all of us. I want you to go back just to the first step. Get that Daily Stoic. This time, it may not take you 2 weeks. This time, it may only take you 4 days. And then you feel like, okay, I'm good. Now I can add on my journaling. And then you add on your journaling and you do that. And after 3 weeks, you feel really good about those 2 steps and you add on another one. And maybe that next step is a little bit bigger. The next step is like going for a 15-minute walk outside with the dog. That one may take you a little bit longer to implement because it requires like putting on shoes and getting out of the house and all that jazz. If you get to a point that you've added on another step and now it's hard and you don't feel like you can keep up with it, go back to square one. And we will talk again next week about when life gets hard and like some actual tangible things to do in that situation. But when you look and you hear me talk about this implementation method and you're like, that sounds miserable and it sounds like it's going to take forever. First off, it's not going to be miserable, even if some days are hard. It will probably take you longer than you want it to. But I would rather you take the next 5 months to get really consistent at 5 steps. You pick one step in August, you get really good at that one. And then you add another step in September and you get really good at that one. And you do that every month for the rest of the year. And you go into 2020, I put into 24. Wow, I definitely meant into 2025 with a solid 5-step routine, right? You go into 2025 with this 5-step routine that you are doing 80% of the days. Then start all 5 steps next week and only do it for 2 days and quit. That's not what I want for you. I would rather you slow and steady, 1 step a month for the next 5 months than to try to start all 5 at one time and have it be really all over the place. Okay, I'm going to check the comments really quick. Okay, it's just a question. I'll get to your question, Brittany. Okay. That is the process. Those are the steps. That is us working on our routines. I know that it's not what you want to hear. I know that you're like, I thought you were going to give me like the secret sauce to like starting my routine and sticking with it. This is the secret sauce, is you do it 1 step at a time. Okay, so I'm going to come over. I'm going to answer Brittany's question, and then we have a question that was submitted last week. So my problem is that I have to have brushing my teeth, washing my face, showering, etc. Otherwise, I don't prioritize them. Totally understand. Totally relate. Would you recommend putting those into a separate routine when I wake up and then having the new routine start slightly later? I'm basically starting from scratch because the first trimester was so rough. So, Brittany, I guess my question is, are these things, if they're things you're already doing, you just won't forget if they're part of your routine, you can start with those. Like you can have those and then add on new steps to those. You don't necessarily need to have it start slightly later. I just wouldn't add more than one brand new step, right? So this new routine, if there's something new that you want to add. But if you feel like you're starting from scratch, then start from scratch. Start with just one of these. It's okay, by the way. Like you're literally growing organs right now. If you need to start with just brushing your teeth this week, there are things I'm already doing, but I'm not consistent about when and how often I'm doing them. Great. Then they're new. Then take back what I just said. Start with these. Pick one of these. Great. Start with that. Do that one first. Do that one for a week. Then if that feels good, then you add on another one. But I have been here with these kinds of steps, especially like brushing my teeth and washing my face, and especially at night, I lump them together. And I'm like, well, I don't feel like doing any of it. And it's like, okay, well, can you just do one of them? Like maybe there are nights that I don't have the energy or the capacity to do all of the steps in my routine, but can I just do one? But when you start them all at the same time, you are so much more likely to lump them together and have them as an all or nothing. And it doesn't have to be that way. There can be days that you have lower energy that you only do one. But when you're building your way up to that, I want you to start with just one at a time. That makes sense. The good news is, which I kind of said earlier, if it's something you've done before and it's not brand new, it hopefully won't take you as long to build up that consistency, to build up to that it feels good. Right? Clearly, in your situation, Brittany, you don't feel good, right? You say, I'm not consistent about when and how often. So to you, that feeling is not consistent, doesn't feel good to you. So what I want you to do is get to a place that does feel good with one of them before you add on another one, because that is going to make you feel better than doing all or none of them, frankly. Just getting one. And I remember that feeling because I had a very, very crummy first trimester too, for lack of not swearing. Yeah, I hope that was helpful. Let's answer this question that was submitted last week about routines. So she said, I'm saying she, but I actually cannot tell. So they said, Can we talk about planner routines? I set up my month, week, and check in frequently on a daily basis and throughout the days. But the daily check ins aren't a necessity based activity. So things like habit tracking, time tracking, monthly check in, updating lists, goal tracking, etc., don't get done on a regular basis. When it comes to goals, I want to do some of these things to keep track of wins and learning opportunities. It seems like I would benefit from a small list of things to check or do in my planner daily, weekly to get the most out of it. Do you have any other ideas? I do have AM and PM check ins as part of my routines. However, I'm usually just doing this quick to get going. If I have time to sit down and work in my planner, I tend to start playing. Any suggestions? So I love this question for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's all kinds of routines, right? Like we talked last week about specific examples. We talked about AM, we talked about PM, we talked about before work, we talked about cleaning. There are so many types of routines. And this is absolutely an example of a routine that to some people may seem unnecessary. Maybe like, I don't need a routine to look at it. I just look at my planner and I do the things and that's good enough. And to some people, it may be like, no, I need to set up more of a structure if I'm actually going to follow through on what I know will help me with my goals in the long run. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out. Number two is this routine follows the same structure and rules as every other routine. So what I want you to do, and this comment was on last week's video, so I'm sure you watched last week's video, but I want you to take last week's video and apply those steps to this. What is it that you want to get out of it? What are the steps that could possibly be a part of it? What time of day would be best? Because it sounds like your AM and PM check-ins aren't necessarily the best time for you to do this. Your AM one is like, quickly, let's start my day. And PM is like, I'm done wrapping up my day. Maybe there's another time of day that would be better for you to do this kind of a check-in. How much time could you dedicate during that? All the questions that we talked about last week, take those and apply it to this goal. And then trial and error. We're going to dive deeper into this next week. I feel like I've said that a million times in this live, but we are. The concept of routines in general is not a one and done. It is not, let me design this beautiful, perfect routine and implement it and it will all be perfect forever and ever. Not even close. Your life is going to change. Your routines are going to change. You're going to learn what works and what doesn't work. And so what I want you to do is try. I don't want you to sit here and try and design this perfect routine and not try and not see what could possibly work. So I just lost my train of thought because something else popped in my head that I'm like, oh, I should have written that down. Does anyone else have that issue? Where you're just like, oh, random thought of like something I need to do. This is potentially a routine that you won't know what works and what doesn't work for you until you try it. And so instead of sitting here and thinking, asking if we have other ideas, I'm sure if I wanted to, I could come up with other ideas. But what I really want you to do is you listed all of these things. I want you to figure out which one you think would be the most helpful for your why and your goals and try it. Try it out, implement it and try it out, and then see how it goes. And you can always make changes and edit it in the future. But we can only like sit and logic our way through so much. And then we actually just need to try and do something and see if it works. So that would be my biggest suggestion to you. Take this routine, this thought in your head, go through all the questions from last week, and then try something and see how it works. But I think it's a great idea. And it sounds like it's something that would really help you. Be helpful for you is what I was trying to say. I also want to remind everyone here that if you have questions like this on these lives, especially if you're here watching the replay, you can always leave them on the video. And then next week I will answer it like this. And if anybody has any thoughts and things they want to chime in with that are here live, they absolutely can. But don't feel like just because you're not here live, you don't get to ask questions, because you absolutely can. And I can do it this way for you. Okay. That is all the stuff that I have planned for you today. It is now time for questions. Where's the pop-up? You're welcome to ask any questions that you have. It does not have to be about routines or the topic of the week. It can be about your individual goals, struggles, something that you feel like you need help with. It could be a topic that you want to chat about. You can just put the word topic and whatever it is, whatever's on your mind, whatever y'all want to chat about. The floor is yours. Any questions? Those of you that are here live, it can be about literally anything. I know sometimes it feels like, well, we're talking about routines. My question has to be about routines. It doesn't. Your question can be about anything. Have you tried any good recipes lately? That's a great question, given that that is my goal, is to try new recipes. One of them I feel like is not worth sharing. And then the other two were both recipes for Lila. So I don't know if anybody else would benefit from those recipes, but at the same time, even if you would, I'm not sure I want to share those necessarily with, not that I don't want to share the recipe. I'm not trying to like gatekeep the recipe, but like whether it was a hit or miss is very Lila and her life and her preferences. And I've been trying to be very thoughtful about not sharing those things on the internet. So that said, I don't have any new recipes that I have tried for us, me and Sam, to share with you, but I'm trying a new one tonight and we'll see how it goes. It's just a side dish. Sam wanted to try a new vegetable, not a new vegetable, obviously, but like a new vegetable to us cooking it at home. So we'll see how that goes tonight. And then I will report back on how that goes. And maybe I have that one to share with you. I will try to make sure in my next favorites video, if I have any recipes that I've been loving, that I will share them in that video, but nothing worth shouting to the rooftops about yet. Morgan, first off, thank you for including your name as my example. If your name that you prefer to go by, your first name, or whatever name you want to go by, is not the same as your YouTube handle, I would love for you to include it in your question. That way, I can always address you by your first name. So, how to come back from vacation ready to jump into daily life. So, this is somewhat related to what we'll talk about next week, but I'm going to answer your question for you. First off, with a smidge of tough love, and that you cannot just jump back into daily life. We are not robots. We cannot just turn off our switch from vacation mode to being like in like daily life, regular life mode. And in an ideal world, our vacations would be long enough that we have the same number of, like, we have a number of days to like come, because we can't do it the other way around either, by the way. It's really tough to just like toggle from like life mode to vacation mode. And so you'll notice when you go on vacation, when you take time off of whatever it is that you're going on vacation from, by the way, it doesn't have to necessarily be work, that it takes you a couple days, right? It takes you a couple of days to come off. So in an ideal world, we have those couple of days to transition from real life to vacation. Then we have like actual vacation mode that you can just be on vacation mode. And then you have a couple days still on vacation to go from vacation back to work mode. The truth is, our vacations are not typically, at least those of us here in the US, we do not typically take enough time off for that to be the case. So we kind of rush this first one, like getting from like real life mode to vacation. And then we're actually on vacation. And then we come home and we immediately just try to jump back in. And that's just really tough. So what I always try to do, and this is so much easier said than done, because I have been the girl. When I was working in my corporate job and I only had 2 weeks of vacation, I would for sure take that last flight out the night like before my vacation started, and sometimes either take the red eye or the first flight on Monday morning and go straight to the office and literally like not even have sleeping to transition from like vacation to work mode. Is if work is the thing that you can't transition, like you can't have days where you like think about your day, okay? Like your normal 24 hours. Part of it's work, part of it's routines, part of it's home, part of it's family, like all the things. In an ideal world, you're not going from 24 hours of vacation to that 24 hours. Most of us, though, don't give ourselves the wiggle room with that work chunk in between. So to the best of your abilities, if you could even have one day of that or a half a day of that, that can be really helpful. I've been trying to be better about that of like the day we get back from a trip, I'm not working. Like I have a day to at least start to inch my way back into regular life and doing those other things. So if you can't do that, then you have to remember mindset that your work piece is there and that's the part that you can't change. So then the other stuff may not happen. You may still be in vacation mode around work and you won't have the energy, capacity, whatever it is to do all of your other routines. And so the thought of the first day back doing work and laundry and cleaning and grocery shopping and all these things is like not going to happen. And so giving yourself the time to inch your way back into it. Now, some suggestions on actually doing that. First off, with routines, prioritizing which routine makes you feel most in control. Start there and let those days, let the other routines take a couple of days. Same thing with implementing steps. Goes with the topic of the week. I don't expect myself to do every step of my routine the day I get back, but if I can at least do one or two of the steps, that makes me feel more on top of it. Then I also try to think about how can I simplify all those other things. So when it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning and cooking for the week, can we just order in for a couple of days? Like, can we factor that into the vacation budget? Or can we just have freezer meals ready to go, in the freezer? And buy freezer meals, by the way, y'all, I don't actually like pre-cook things and stick them in the freezer. I mean like Trader Joe's orange chicken and fried rice and vegetables are in my freezer ready to go. Those kinds of things so that I'm not worried. Or sometimes I try to do grocery delivery when we're going to get back so that nobody has to worry about going to the grocery store. And like there are already going to be at least the staples that we need for the week, even if I didn't have time to meal plan. I've heard people talking about sending away their laundry when they come back from vacation or going straight to a laundromat. Yes, even if you don't live in a giant city where they're necessary because people don't have washers and dryers, you could still go to a laundromat and like get all your vacation laundry done and be done in 45 minutes instead of 4 hours. Just try to ask yourself how you can simplify things so that you're not just immediately trying to go from like vacation to life mode. Cause it's just, we're not robots and we can't toggle that way. Yes, also a good option. Families pre-order groceries for pickup the night or the next day they get home. I always forget about this as an option as somebody who lives in a city without a car. Picking up groceries is not something I've ever done. I get them delivered, but yes, definitely an option. Tidying up the house before you leave on vacation. Oh, hello from the Windy City. Okay, so you're here. The city is so busy and bustling, it's kind of overwhelming. 100%. When you live in a city, you just feel like and you immediately have to get back to regular life. But like those people weren't on vacation yesterday and you were. So like it's okay if it takes you a couple of days. This is another good suggestion. I always take the day off after my official vacation plans in case I need it. I am in a job where if I don't, I can just show up and work. Also an option. It also might take a little bit of trial and error, like of what you need after vacation. I will tell you that my needs after vacation have changed a lot since having a baby. Like what I need that next day is different than what I needed in the past when we got back from trips. But I know that at least not having to worry about work has been really helpful for me. Another thing we have been trying to do is like making sure that the plan for the next week is in place before we leave, because then we're not also trying to talk about that when we get back. Hopefully some of those ideas were helpful. I know it's tough. I also did a vlog on this at some point that I'll try to find where I like actually did this in a vlog in real life. Going back to the recipes conversation, I've been trying new recipes and I've learned to have a backup meal. I have to have a backup meal helps me want to try something new. That's a good suggestion, because I have also had that happen. Not total fails, but you're like, I don't want to eat this. It's not something I want to eat. Okay. Next question. I'm trying to get back into reading, but only reading one book a month. I want to read more. How do I become and watch less TV? How do I become an avid reader? This is a great question. I first want to say that a one book a month is awesome. And there are some people that might see that and be like, well, I'm not even close to that many. Everybody's reading goals are different. There are some people who their goal is just to read one book in this whole year. And then you've got booktubers that are trying to read 100 and plus, and then some. So first off, do not compare your reading goals to other people's reading goals. If, though, you know that what you want to do is read more and watch less TV, you attack this the same way you would any other goal. First off, you start with where you're at, right? So right now you're reading one book a month, which is awesome. That's 12 books over the course of the year. That breaks down for you and the length of books you're reading and the amount of pages the books are that you're reading and the reading speed that you typically are at. You probably know about how many hours a month you're reading. That's where you're starting. So then increase that a little bit. Maybe you go from reading an hour a week to 2 hours a week. I'm literally just throwing out numbers, but my suggestion is not trying to jump from one book a month to one book a week. That's a big jump, and that's a lot of reading. Number 2 is when are you going to do that reading and incorporating that into your everyday life? Are you going to do it in the morning, during your lunch hour, after work, before bed? When are you going to implement that reading? Then you can also come at this from both sides. So you can do it both from wanting to read more, but then also wanting to spend less time on TV. So again, you start with where you're at. So I would ask you about how many hours of TV are you watching a day or a week? You don't have to answer this, but like that would be the question. And depending on whether you want to tackle it from a daily standpoint or a weekly standpoint. Okay, so that's where you're at now. Just decrease that slightly. Set a limit and say, okay, I get to watch this many minutes or hours of TV per day or per month, per week. And then that is your goal. So those are the steps that you're working on, is slightly decreasing your TV, slightly increasing the amount at which you read, and then you will work your way up to a higher number. The last thing I'll say on this, I think the biggest key to that phrase avid reader is reading things that you like and not trying to read things that like other people think you should read or other people like or other people suggest. Figure out what you like. There are a bunch of Lazy Genius episodes. So if you've never heard me talk about the Lazy Genius podcast, also her book, I love her book. Also her new book, y'all. I keep meaning to tell you this. I did buy tickets to the book signing. I bought a ticket because I decided I wasn't waiting to figure out somebody to go with me. I was just going to buy my own ticket. Anyway, she has a handful of podcast episodes on reading. So figuring out what you like to read, setting reading goals, figuring out a reading rhythm, all those kinds of things. If you Google Lazy Genius reading, you'll get all the episodes that she has done. That is what I would recommend. A couple comments on reading. Took me a long time over the last year and a half to get back into reading, to consider myself an avid reader. Now I fall asleep every time I try. Goal for August is 1 to 2 chapters a day. Again, Brittany, I'm going to reiterate, you're also like growing organs. So like if you fall asleep after a chapter, that's okay. Have you tried audiobooks to listen to books while doing other activities? I've had the most success in reading by listening to books. I did start with listening to books I read before. Also a great suggestion. I did that too. The first like fiction audio I did was Harry Potter. If you're enjoying reading as you do it, it'll get more exciting to read and will get easier for you to pick up a book instead of doing something else. Also a great suggestion for reading. It's kind of that habit of just turning to reading instead of turning to the TV or to your phone or to whatever it is that you typically turn to instead of reading. Hopefully those were helpful for you. Small steps, and it will add up. But don't just try to like change everything overnight. I put audiobook apps, Libby and the Cloud Library on my phone to help when I need some background noise and don't want music. Also a great suggestion. Make it easy for yourself. Have your book handy, have your Kindle, have your book, whatever it is, have that always at the ready as opposed to something else. I've been trying to do that too, where I have my Kindle like here in my office. And so if I have 5 minutes to spare for something, I will pick that up over my phone and read instead of scrolling Instagram. Okay, sorry, I was trying to read. Some of these comments are just like hellos and wins. Small victory, got my car successfully inspected. Sorry to be joining late. No apologies needed. Happy to join a live. Hello from Ireland. Hello, Audrey. It's good to see your name. Thanks for the info and suggestions. I needed this because I just got home from 3 weeks in Africa. Pam, that is a long trip. You were away for a long time. And I have said this before, but I'm going to repeat myself because I didn't say it in the conversation earlier. I always give myself the same amount of time that I was away to get back into it, to feel like I am back on, right? So if I was gone for a weekend, I get 2 days. Like by Wednesday, I need to kind of like get back to myself. For 3 weeks, you're gone for 3 weeks. It might take you the entire month of August to feel like you're back to it. And that's okay. That's all right. Kimmy, thanks for including your name. I'm new here. Welcome. Where do I get the monthly habit tracker? The monthly, I'm assuming you mean this goals, not that. This goal sheet. This is a piece of my goal planner. I do not sell this individual page on its own. I don't believe it's helpful without the other components behind it. It is within my goal planner. Up on my website right now, you can get just the Q3 version standalone by itself. I took down the full year version, but you can get the Q3 version by itself. And that includes these pages for July, August, and September. There will be a Q4 version, obviously up for Q4. And then I have already started working on the 2025 version, which is bananas. Like the fact that we're already saying the phrase 25, y'all, it's only July. Okay. There is still so much of the year left. It just also feels like, as somebody who talks about goals, like I have to start thinking about it that far in advance. But from a personal standpoint, I was about to say something that's not totally true. From a personal standpoint, the only thought I have put towards 25 is that I created a 2025 brainstorm sheet, which is available to the community, by the way, for free. It's in Teachable in that like top section. But I printed that out and I had one thing. I wrote down one idea for 25 that I felt like I didn't have time to prioritize this year and thought maybe I would do it next year. Otherwise, I personally, like there's nothing. I'm still focused on 2024. It's only business stuff that I've had to start thinking about 25. All right. I think I'm all caught up on questions and comments. Anything else on your mind? What else do you want to talk about? What else do you feel like you're struggling with? Also, sometimes y'all, like one of my favorite things about the lives, those of you who join live, especially those of you who are here every week, I love seeing your names pop up consistently. And I love when you share your thoughts and tips for other people. That makes me very happy. Please keep doing that. That is one of the beauties of the live, is that if somebody has a question, whether you're here live to ask it or you comment on this video and I can answer it next week, but having other people share their thoughts too, right? Because what I suggest and what works for me may not click with you as much as what comes from somebody else, or somebody else's brain might work better than me that day. We'll come up with something that I didn't think about. Anything else y'all want to chat about today? I'm loving the podcast with you and your sister. Thank you. There is still so much that we are trying to get situated. In fact, today, my sister was texting me pictures of like stuff to put behind us. That's like more exciting than just a white wall, but that is less expensive than us saving up to buy a neon sign. Because the podcast is a hobby. Not only is it not a business and doesn't make money, but it actually costs money. It doesn't make any money. But it is fun and we have so much fun. If you haven't listened to it yet, if you're not a podcast person, no sweat. We do actually have record it so you can see us, and it's here on YouTube. And I've gotten lots of messages for those of you thinking, because YouTube does auto captions. So if you're somebody who has struggles with hearing, you can do it that way on YouTube. But you can also just see our faces and our reactions. But you can also get it wherever you listen to podcasts. And Spotify actually created this new commenting feature, which I thought that was cool. Anyway, it's literally just me and my sister talking every week about random things, like literally random things. And the fun part is that we're 9 years apart. So we're at very different phases in our life, phases. And we have a lot in common, but we're also very different. So if you are looking for a new podcast or you didn't know, I also will say I'm a little bit more unfiltered over there. We swear, heads up on that. And I think we're just a little bit more like free, like spirited than I am on like over here in business land. I still consider myself very authentic and I'm very much myself, but it's different when I'm with when I'm with her. And she's my little sister. Like sometimes we just like go on tangents. And we also started this new thing where we've been trying new drinks every week. So whether it's a new brand of alcohol or a new recipe, we've been starting the episode off with new drinks, and that has been super fun. So I love that. So if you have any suggestions on that too, like companies you would want us to try. But thank you. It's a fun adventure, but we have a lot of things that we would like to try and do differently. Hello, I am having to get into a new routine with putting my 2-year-old on a routine. Any advice for a newish mom getting the entire family on a new routine? This is definitely a question that even though now that I have a baby, I don't feel like I can give you the best answer possible for this. I can answer this from a goal mindset standpoint, but I cannot. I obviously have not done this myself. I have a 10-month-old, not a 2-year-old, and she has somewhat of a routine, but it is not consistent and it doesn't need to be because I have the flexibility that her routine can be flexible. And so that's okay for our family. I understand that for other families and their situations, that's not the case. And you have to have somewhat of a routine. So from a standpoint of what I typically talk about, my suggestions would be to number one, make sure the why behind getting on the routine benefits everybody. Like make sure the why and what your family is working towards with the routine is everyone's on the same page. Number two is small steps. So not waking up tomorrow and your entire family is on a brand new routine and we're all starting this new routine on Monday, but kind of inching your way towards that. And so what tweaks can you make like a little bit at a time over the course of a period of time to get yourself and your family to that routine and not just trying to like pivot tomorrow. And then I think the other thing to really remember is when it comes to other people, whether they are spouses or children or parents or friends or siblings, but especially 2-year-olds, flexibility is going to have to be key. And your routine is not going to look the exact same every single day because that is, I think, just life with kids, but also with other people. Like, even if it was like another me, I feel like when you're dealing with somebody else, whether that person likes routines or not, it's really difficult to just be like, okay, we're going to be the same every day because that's just not, I don't know, it's just not, we're humans, we're not robots. I feel like that's the theme today. And so just being flexible and knowing what the anchors are, like what are the key pieces of your routine that makes you feel good, but what are the pieces that you can kind of be flexible about? Like, is it making sure that your family sits down for dinner at the same time or just sits down together every night? Is it making sure that everyone's in bed by a certain time so you can have some alone time? Or is it making sure everybody wakes up at a certain time so you can be out the door? Like whatever it is that like needs to be anchor that, but then remember that you might need a little bit of flexibility. But I think making sure that you know what the vibe and like the purpose of the routine is, and then working at it in small steps. But hopefully I will have a better answer for this for you in a year and a half ish. I know she will be too, and not a year and a half and like a year and a month, but like, you know what I mean? This is my first live. Very excited that I get to join this time after watching for years. Oh my gosh, thank you. Also, I think your name is Lily, but I love that your photo is picture of flowers. Are those lilies? I do not know my flowers very well. I'm dreading figuring out life in 6 months and not having normal anymore, I'm going to need so much more help with this next year. Absolutely. I mean, you've done this before. I know it has been time since you had a newborn, but you have implemented a new member of your family in the past, and you know that you eventually figure out a new normal, right? You figure out what normal looks like now, and it ebbs and flows, and there are days that feel like you've got it together and everyone's on top of it, and then there are days that feel like chaos. And that is true. I mean, that was true before I had a kid too. Um, and you will just know, like, you'll have to adjust. And honestly, I feel like pregnancy kind of prepares you for that because you're doing that now, right? Your first trimester, hard, made it through. Now we're on our second trimester. You got this energy, and you know that like eventually it'll shift and it's going to get hard again. You're going to get really tired. I was 19 last time and much more fly by the seat of my pants. That's funny because my mom says the same thing about the difference between raising me and raising my brother and sister. Is like she was young and just took me everywhere because she was like, whatever, like routines. Whatever, let's go. We're leaving the house. And I think you can still be somewhat fly by the seat of your pants, but know what's important. Right? Like it can be a combination, especially in those first couple months when it's just like chaos. That newborn life. Okay. Wow, y'all, we are almost out of time. So I am going to ask you the last question. Thank you for all your great questions today, by the way. And do not forget, if you're watching the replay, you can always comment on this video with a question and I will answer it on the live next week. I mean, if I feel like I can if I can feel like I can do the answer justice in writing, I will. But if I can't, I will answer it next week's live. Okay. What's the one thing you're going to do this week to make progress on your goals? What is the one step you are going to take to help you continue to move forward in your goals? My one thing is to get all the content done for August. I'm already kind of on pace to do this, which feels good. I feel like in the past, I have been kind of like 75% of the way there, which isn't bad and still helpful. But that feeling of it being all done, like what it does is it frees up my brain and my mental space and my capacity to focus on the other projects, other goals, other things, which is always really helpful. So if you're here live, please share in the chat. And if you are catching the replay and you're still here, you're the best. Let us know in the comments. What's the one thing you're going to do this week to make progress on your goals? There's just a delay in comments. Come on. Okay, there's a couple. Prioritize reading in the evening. I don't know why I read that as because this one was retry routines. Watch the goal call and set up August goals. Yeah, that was our call on Monday. If you have not watched it yet, give that a watch and get your August goal set up. Get one walk online. I love it. Y'all know I say this all the time, but your steps do not have to be big for you to make progress on your goals. Those small steps add up and they do make a difference. I promise. All right. Make sure you're here next week, either live or replay, as we talk about implementing and actually doing those routines when life gets in the way. So what happens when you go on vacation? What happens when your child gets sick? What happens when XYZ? We're going to talk about all that next week. All right. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. If you wouldn't mind giving this video a thumbs up before you head out, I would greatly appreciate that. And if you're new here, please click that subscribe button. See you next week.